If you don't know me, I am a fan of the New York Giants and the Jets, as a matter of fact. I like the Yankees and the Mets. I'm a transplant to the area, so I don't have this exclusive core mentality. However, there's one particular player, Derek Jeter, and those of you, especially from Boston area, probably hate him and despise him. And in fact, Sports Illustrated had voted him 1 or 2 times as the most overrated player because of all the fame, 5 championship rings, etc. So for those of you who are from other 24 countries, New York Yankees is a historic baseball organization, over 100 years in existence, have won 27 championships in that time. So that comes out to about every 4 years, they win the championship. Okay? So it's the most historic and the most successful sports franchise in the history of the world. No other team in any other sport, in any other part of the world, has won more than the New York Yankees. And he's the captain and the shortstop, arguably one of the most important positions of all time. So I know what you're thinking, especially from Boston. BS, he's overrated, he's not that good. So math is an integral part of baseball, believe it or not. Every statistics is tracked. So I wanted to do it by the numbers. Facts don't lie. So I apologize for the speaker notes, but this was supposed to be me walking around talking about it. Let's go over these numbers real quick. Okay, 27-43. How many games he played as a Yankee? And that's just longevity. Speaks to his longevity. 2,673 as a shortstop. He has never played any other defensive position since the beginning of his career. No one has ever done that. This next number is incredible. 3,461 number of hits. Okay? And I will argue by any measure that baseball is the most difficult sport there is technically. No other sport is where 70% failure rate is considered Hall of Fame material. Think about that. Any other sport, if you fail 70% of the time, you're not a superstar. In baseball, you are. That's how hard it is. Okay? So think about that number and the name. Only 5 other players have had more hits. Ty Cobb, Pete Rose, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial. These are the pantheon of baseball players, and Derek's in there. Okay? Next number, 173. I wanted to put it in context. To get 3,461 hits, okay, over 162 game per season, that means Derek Jeter, on average, hit 173 hits a year for 20 years. Okay? So if you multiply 173 times 20 years, you get 3,461. Remarkable number if you know anything about baseball. The other one, over 1,000 multi-hit games in his career. In the history of baseball, over a century of players, only 3 players have had 1,000 multi-hit games. Stan Musial, Pete Rose, Hank Aaron. Babe Ruth didn't do it. Tony Gwynn didn't do it. Pete Rose is up there, and he's number 1. Okay. So if you think about what I just said, in the history of baseball, Derek Jeter is only one of 4 players to have done that. Okay. Remarkable number. Okay. And the 200 is, he's played 200 postseason games. 200 times. It's 1 minute already, so I'm almost done. That's okay. Thank you. Okay. So 200 times he's played in the postseason. You think, oh, he's got a lot of chances. He's just lucky because he got stuck with a good team. Maybe. But look at this statistic. Of the 200 postseason hits, he's played 158 postseason games. That's a regular season. Okay, 162 per season. 200 hits, 220 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 308 batting average, 374 batting. So for those of you that know baseball, these numbers make sense. Otherwise, trust me when I say these are spectacular numbers. And to prove my point, only 4 other players have ever had these types of statistics in a regular season game. Never mind the postseason in New York under the bright lights where it matters the most. So the bottom line is Derek Jeter delivered when it counted the most. Okay? And then finally, I'll leave you with 92. Okay? There was one in 2006, 2007. He had 100 games where he hit 92 of them. Okay? No one but Ichiro has ever done that in the history. And finally, 1 out of 243. That's a number of games that didn't mean anything. In other words, 99.96% of the time, his game meant something. There was something on the line. Okay? And this is the final number. 11 number of seasons with these statistics. No one in the history of game has ever put up these numbers. Not Hank Aaron, not Frank Robinson, not anybody else. So think about how many times I've said no one in the history of game has done these, and I would submit that Derek Jeter is not the greatest shortstop, not the greatest Yankee, but one of the greatest players of all time. Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
So basically a little bit of background about me. I'm the guy behind SharkBytes, and if you cracked or hacked Wi-Fi, so you probably used it. I'm originally from Belgium, and my native language was French. The first thing, when I was a kid, I got my first computer when I was about 6, and as any other kid, we play games on the computer, but at some point, like a year later, I got bored and started digging in manuals in the computer to see what it could do. And I could apparently do some programming, very basic, when you boot it without floppy, so which was very nice. I started doing some very simple programs, and I saw a TV show that had a fun game, and I managed to figure out how to play the game and how to win that game, and I programmed that thing on the computer. Fortunately, it couldn't save. I couldn't figure out how to save that program, that basic program, on the floppy. So all I had was I had to put that on paper. And another interest I had was I had those Fisher-Price walkie-talkies, very crappy two-way radio. You probably had a range of like 30 feet, something like that. But I was fascinated by the fact that you could transmit voice, transmit information over wireless. You didn't need any wire to do that. I found that fascinating, and it was a big interest. And until my college, I always had computers. I figured things out. I was doing programming here and there, a few things, nothing big. And college was pretty eventful. If I were to do all the stuff that I did on the network at school nowadays, I would get in a lot of trouble. Yeah. And when there was a topic that interested me, I always wanted to learn more than just what the teacher told us to learn. And one of the topics was Linux. I learned quite a bit. A friend of mine got a chance to set up, it was back then Mandrake on his computer, and we were remoting in the computer to use screen and bit checks for chat on IRC. That was a lot of fun. And also later on, during that time, I got a brand new laptop by the end of the second year of that college. And the laptop didn't have wireless card, so I bought one. I got the famous Linksys WRT54G access point. And I started playing with wireless during the summertime. I had like 2 months where I could do whatever I want. And I looked for doing more than just sending a wireless, go to the internet. And stumbled upon Aircrack. It was a very nice project. Hanged out on IRC, chatted with the main developer, submitted very tiny patches and stuff like that. And I managed to grab my own web network. It was a lot of fun, very easy to do. Unfortunately, a few months later, the guy disappeared. No news, server got shut down. And so a few months later, I took over the project called SharkBytes. I did it because, well, I liked the project. Wireless was something, a passion. Programming was something I loved to do. Unfortunately, well, back then I didn't know much about wireless, but I got to learn a lot about all those things, even managing projects. And later on, probably a year later, a friend convinced me to go to convention in the US. And I went to DEF CON, so I had a blast, and I met a bunch of people. Then a year later, I got a chance to speak at the very first SharkFest. I'm sorry, Janice, that played a big part in what I am now. So, and back then I was very shy, socially awkward, and public speaking I hated that. I avoided as much as I could. And I did the first talk at SharkFest, and funny enough, I talked to some people here who attended the talk back in 2008. And why I did it is because I want to share knowledge, share my knowledge and what I learned about wireless, so people could learn and in turn share what they learned about it. And what I mean is that a new convention I went to always kept an open mind, and I met a lot of people. A lot of those people became very good friends, and I always try to keep an open mind to when doing that. So anyway, my point is, you should do what you love to do, travel, go beyond your comfort zone, be open-minded and meet people. Great things are going to happen. You also never stop being curious, learn new things, and share your knowledge. Thank you.
About the end of my second year in college, the Dean of Students and I came to a mutual agreement. I wouldn't reapply for a third year, and he wouldn't turn down my application. In that vein, on my last full day of school, one of my original roommate people from the dorm room I started in my freshman year said, "Let's go to the lake. Some friends are out there. We can do some swimming and jump off the rocks." I said, "Sure, no problem." So we got in the car, drove to the lake, parked in the lot, walked through the woods, and I saw a lake and rocks. The only problem was there weren't anything like a beach. It was a cliff. Really, honest to God, a cliff. Dave and I had to make sure about how far the cliff was down, so all you rocket scientists out there, I've never figured this out. I don't really want to know. All I know is we picked up rocks and we went 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and you saw the splash, but you didn't hear it. It was enough to tell you that it was a long way down. And friends were coming up and they're going, "Oh, this is great, we've done," how many times have you done it already? Well, we've done it 2 or 3 times. Watch, and they, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1000, right? It was a long way down. So, for whatever reason, after consultation, figuring out the water was deep enough, Dave survived, why wouldn't we survive? Silly thing for a 19-year-old to say, right? Answering the question that Mom always asked if they jumped off a bridge, yes, we would. So eventually he got enough courage, and my friend is standing there, and Dave goes, and I just said, "This is it." Yeah! And I hit the water, I'm in the water, going, yes, and the exhilaration was replaced with, holy crap, I gotta swim to the surface. So I quickly swam to the surface, grabbed my first breath of air, and I was exhilarated. It was an amazing thing. For all of about 5 or 10 seconds, because here comes my other friend, he dives down, next thing you know, we're both in the water. There's only one problem. The shore is over there. Now, I was a fairly decent swimmer, but I gotta tell you, for the first time in my life ever swimming, and hopefully the last time in my life ever swimming, it took everything I had to say, I am not going to die in this lake today. I'm going to make it to that shore. Now, unless you work for Red Bull, have a GoPro strapped to your helmet, and have a lot of planning involved, you probably don't get up in the morning thinking, I'm going to go jump off a cliff. And I would never do it again. However, cliffs are around us all over the place. Opportunities are abounded by people who suggest that maybe you have something to say. So in that vein, on May 21st this year, a couple of my colleagues and myself anonymously went together and bought these for everyone in our department. This is a Red Nose. Red Nose Day was started by Whoopi Goldberg, Robin Williams, and Billy Crystal as part of Comic Relief to be able to afford people an opportunity to be able to donate to different charities around the world to help children and families. Well, it's amazing what a little red nose will do, or not do, because people are people no matter what. We took the red noses, we put a little piece of paper down on every one of the desks, anonymously the night before, and they all came in the morning, we watched the reaction. And people are people. Some of the people laughed. Some of the people got it. Some of the people were who they were the night before. How could that be? What is that? Who in the world's doing this? Some of the people, well, I felt sorry for one colleague in particular because rather than actually go ahead and do anything with the nose or even explain and discuss, he took it and he put it in the cubicle next door. I noticed that and thought, well, geez, what happened to his nose? So when he left, I grabbed it out of the vacant cubicle, put it in his. I left for lunch. Came back, it was back in the vacant cubicle. He not only didn't want to say anything about it, he was too scared of a red nose to put the red nose on and have some fun. Sometimes jumping off a cliff is literal. Sometimes jumping off a cliff is standing in front of your colleagues and doing something you've never done before in your life. And surviving, I hope. And sometimes it's as simple as putting on a red nose and doing something you never can imagine yourself doing and finding out how fun it is. That night on the way home, for the heck of it, I left the nose on because, well, after all, I drive a smart car. And on the side of the smart car, there's a sign that says, caution, maximum 15 clowns. It really is. Show anybody the picture wants to see it. So I'm driving home that night, and I'm waiting at a stoplight. And there, in my window rolled down, there next to me are two little blonde-headed girls sticking their head out the door of the windows of their SUV. Dad at the steering wheel smiling like you wouldn't believe. And they yell out, "We like your nose!" Don't be afraid to try on the nose. Don't be afraid to take an opportunity. Don't be afraid to jump off a cliff. Thank you.
Okay, my name is John Brosnan. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm the CEO of Netfort. We're based in Galway in Ireland. So a few weeks ago I was talking to a buddy of mine who, after being 2 years after working in a multinational, set up his own startup. And he's just an electronic engineer just like me. He spent over 20 years in different multinationals, ended up as VP of a very well-known networking company based here in the Valley, and done very well. So he jumped off that cliff 2 years ago. So I asked him, I said, how's it going? He said, John, I never realized it'd be so hard. And I was a bit shocked. So to hear a guy, first of all, that he admitted it to me, that he was finding it so hard. And two, you know, a guy at his level, who had done what he had achieved and made a lot of money, was finding it really hard in the startup. So he was the CEO, one of the co-founders. So, but in other ways, I wasn't surprised, because he was an enterprise nearly all his life. And suddenly he was involved in all these day-to-day issues that he had never heard of before. And it reminded me that at the start, it's not even so bad, because you're techies, you're an electronic engineer, you get a group of techies together, write some code. But then as the company grows, you come across and you've got to hire people. You've got to hire sales and marketing people. And you go through the hiring and the firing phase. So we went through that phase about 5 years ago, and I found out I wasn't very good at it. So I did what most people do. I was on a training course and read some books. And one of the books that a guy introduced me on the training course was this book. It's called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Ven Arndt. It's the kind of book I like. It's short chapters, easy to read, it's pretty simple. No pictures though, but it's still a nice book to read. But according to the book, you could even read the overview chapter and you probably get the whole book in one. It's just a very good summary of the book. But the core fundamentals of creating a great business are very similar to parenting great kids. Have a handful of rules, repeat yourself a lot, and act consistently with those rules, which is why you must only have a handful. And when you hear the guys in your company mocking you, like your kids mock you sometimes, then you know the word is getting through. The other three core habits in the book are priorities, data, and rhythm. So, according to this guy, each company should have no more than 5 priorities for the year. At the start of the year, sit down and create your top 5 priorities and your top 1 of 5. And then for each group, create your top 3. And I was doing this a few years ago for our development team. I said I'd do it myself first. And it was a really hard job to get it down to 3. So I gave it to our head of development, Morgan. I said, Morgan, here are your top 5 priorities. And he said, what's going on? I thought it was 3. And I said, no, it doesn't make sense. You get 5. You're special. So your priorities. And each person in the company then has a top 3 and a top 1 of 3. So they go along and say, oh, Wiki, these are your 3 priorities for the quarter. 3 very simple ones. And it keeps them very focused. The second habit is measures. What gets measured gets done. It's pretty obvious. Have 2 or 3 daily measures that people can look at and see, am I getting close to my priorities? Is it improving or disimproving? And the third one is rhythm. And it's the rhythm of meetings. Daily, weekly, monthly and quarterly meetings. And we started this about 4 years ago. And so at 9:05 every morning, we have a huddle where people dial in if they're on the road, and it's 15 minutes max. And there's 3 items on the agenda. 5 minutes once up. So we go around, we ask different people what you're working on, and they give us a quick overview. Second item on the agenda is daily measures. Some simple measures that are saying how we get near our priorities, our top 1 priority. And the third one, where are you stuck? And it's 15 minutes, so we ask somebody, do you stuck? Are you need help? No problem solving. Just tell me where you're stuck. And it goes off. And as Janice said at the start, nobody reads email anymore. Yesterday you said it. But if you get people together on a call and they start talking and communicating, some funny things start to happen. You build a great team. You start to execute better. And everything improves, the teamwork improves. So we're still on this down hard road, but some of the simple things in this book have made it a bit less bumpy for us. Thank you very much.
My name is Jennifer. Who are football fans out there? Maybe one of the greatest Dallas Cowboys football fan from the quarterback from the 90s is? Troy Aikman. Anybody ever met Troy? Nobody? You have? Awesome guy? Seemed alright? Alright, cool. Anybody know who the greatest rivalry against the Washington Redskins is? Dallas Cowboys. So I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm born and raised Washington Redskins fan. And in the 90s, my mother worked for United Airlines. And back then, you couldn't do reservations online. She actually worked in a call center. And she got a call one night. This guy needed to make an airline reservation to go from Dallas to Denver. She put all the information in. What's your name? Troy Aikman. No, it's not. Yes, it is. I don't believe you. He said, well, I tell you what. You have a daughter? She said, yeah. After the game, I will take you and your daughter out to dinner if you can get to Denver for this football game. Back then, United Airlines, the benefits were great. You could fly, usually first class, at your leisure, just sign up. So, Mom comes home, tells me all about it. First thing we did, we grabbed a bunch of footballs, we grabbed a bunch of Troy Aikman cards, we grabbed a bunch of jerseys, we put them in our suitcase because we were going to make some money. Not only were we going to meet Troy, we were going to make some money doing it. Washington Redskin fans, come on now. So anyhow, we get on our flight, we go out to Denver, we get in our rental car, we drive out to Mile High Stadium, we get into our hotel room, which is right beside Mile High Stadium. From the window, you can see down into the field. Super cool. So I look down into the field. There weren't any lines on the field. I said, are we sure there's a football game here today, Mom? There's no lines on the field, like they're not even preparing for the game. We called down to the concierge, is there going to be a game here at Mile High Stadium today? They said no. We found a schedule, because they were playing the Broncos. They were playing the Broncos in Dallas. We were in the wrong city. She worked for United. She was quite the high flyer. We got back in the rental car, we drove back to Denver Airport, we filled out our little slip to get on an airplane, we flew to Dallas. We fly to Dallas, we get done, we get our car rental, we drive out to the stadium, we head over to Will Call for our tickets, we show up with all of our paraphernalia. Troy Aikman has tickets waiting for us. Which last name? Last name is Devers. Ms. Devers, there are no tickets here for you. We're like, well, clearly this is a mistake. Can you call down? Jim Johnson is not going to allow any of his players to talk to somebody up at Will Call about possible tickets. So we walked away deflated, and we never met Troy, and the whole thing was just a sham. And so even with family in Dallas, we didn't even bother to call them to tell them that we were in town because we were full of so much shame and so much embarrassment that these Washington Redskins fans were going to make some money off of Troy Aikman and go and beat him. So that was our big story. So while this may not be where do packet lovers find packets, I think we could probably, anybody need any titles? Who wants to give me a title for this shameful talk? You all, overcoming obstacles. Anyways, if you find me in the hallways today, think about it and get back with me. And in the meantime, I'll stick with what I love, which is packets. So thanks so much.
Anyway, I've met a lot of people here that know some of the things that define me as being a real geek. Founder of a very successful ATM company. I've had lots of inventions. People walked up to me and said they've seen they've been to my training courses for how to fix very complicated problems. I've flown in and fixed a lot of various things. But usually with my job, I have to be very professional, and I can't let people know how geeky I really am. So I try to put this professional front up. But really, this crowd, I think I can actually open the door a little bit and show how it is. So the next one. So can we go into presentation mode? Oh, it is up there. Okay. So anyway, one of the things I am is a ham radio operator. When I was 15 years old, I got my license. When I was in high school, I could do 30 words per minute Morse code, and I taught electronic theory at night classes. So lots of stuff happened with this. I used to do a lot of contests and things like that, and I scored very high. But the big thing I did was digital communications over wireless. So I did that very much through the 70s and through the 80s. So next. This is me. This is a system for making beer that I have at home. I win competitions. I won an international competition with my 10th beer. That one beat out all the home brewers out of Seattle and Portland. So living in Vancouver, Canada. Next slide. Yeah, I make big volumes here, but surprisingly, I don't drink a lot of beer. Honestly, I don't. I give most of it away. Here, next slide. Really what I do is I'm into wine. I try to find the best wineries that are out there. I pay about 12 bucks a bottle for my grapes. I make it exactly like anybody else. I'll put my bottles of wine up against $40 to $80 bottles of wine anytime. So I really love to make wine. Yeah, this is an old picture. My wife, bless her soul, She actually is a little bit geeky too. She makes me show the dogs because men win more often than women. Sorry, it's a very political thing. I ride my bike to work every day. It's about a distance of about a marathon. I do 2 races a year. Last year at SharkFest, I started to ride my bike to SharkFest from Vancouver, made it to Seattle, hopped on the plane, and came the rest of the way here. I started at IBM. I'm pretty old. I started at IBM in the 70s, and I really had an electronic background and didn't really understand computers well. And they were teaching me these computer courses, and I just felt really behind. So I decided, for my first computer, I did my own. So I did my own BIOS, my own operating system, wire wrap, the whole thing, that slide. That's the back of the first one I had. And I don't know what I was doing. I had to redesign it many times before it actually worked. Got rid of that. In the 80s, I think this is the very first PC wireless card that ever existed. There was a packet radio card. I wanted to build it, next slide, and I did a whole 1200 baud, and then finally I bought a 9600 baud modem, stuck it on the back so that I could get a little bit of speed out of it. Okay. My kids are a little bit weird, but I don't even notice. In reality, luckily, my wife really puts up with me. She's a little bit like me as well. We've been married for 31 years, and she puts up with me. In reality, the topic here is that I love where this venue is. So let's go quickly through these slides that say how great it is. My first computer had 8K of memory on it. This is the first one I ever programmed on. Keep going. We're going to have to go slightly. My first PC came out of the box the first day I ever saw one. On the first day a PC came out, the BIOS had the guy's name on it, not IBM, handwritten quality tickets on it. This is the first machine I ever wrote a program on. Duplicated downstairs on the same equipment I had, which was punch card, and here's my name, demonstrated on a machine done in the 50s. Let's keep going. I used to repair this machine, the card reader punch, knew it inside out. This one too, I was a tech specialist on 1403 printers, but really my specialty was, this one's from 1959, one of the first computers I worked on. This one, I knew every single wire in. This is Model 30. I could scope down bugs on it. I used to write assembler routines that would do various things to make it go really quickly. And I think I'm almost out of time. This is core memory. I counted this. This is 1K of memory. This is not a microscope. This is my smartphone, and that was full. And I used to fix these too, the tape drives, and so much more. So anyway, that's it. This is kind of opening up the door a little bit. It's a little nervous for me to do this, to actually show that I am a little bit geeky. But anyway, I think there might be more geeks out here anyway, but this is me anyway. So.
Scuba diver. Who does scuba diving? So some scuba divers have things that they would really like to do. One of them is dive as much as they can. The other one is dive the Great Barrier Reef. And finally, everybody always says, oh, sharks are bad, don't swim with sharks. Well, sharks are only bad if you bother the sharks, or if you get in the way of their food. Otherwise, sharks are basically okay. Yeah, go ahead and play. So one of the things that we got to do on the Barrier Reef is 5 days of living, actually 6 days living on a boat, diving 4 to 5 times a day. And one of the dives is what they call the shark feeding dive. And it's a choreographed scene, and this is coming up to it. And when everybody starts getting in the water, the fish start showing up. The fish from microscopic to monster, oh my goodness, look at those teeth. All right, kind of fish. And everybody starts swimming over to the rock. All right, where the fish are going to get fed, and the non-fish get to watch the fish eat. And it's a choreographed thing. They got this area, they call it the theater. So the divers park on the rocks, and the word is, when you sit down, do not move. Do not stick your arms and legs out. Just sit still, be quiet, and breathe. Don't forget to breathe. right? And so you start to see all the fish getting close to the rock. And again, it's a choreographed scene, a choreographed deal. It happens every Friday. And up on the boat, they have this cage. They send the line up. The dive master brings the cage down. You can see the line going off to the right side there. But they bring the cage down, all the fish get close. Now, think about being the little fish. Which little fish might you be? But everybody's going to get to eat today. Now, hopefully you're not part of that food chain to be eaten, right? But everybody's going to get to eat. And when they open up the cage, it is just pandemonium. And this is very important where they say, you don't need to be moving, don't be sticking your arms and your legs out, right? Now, most of the fish are a little bit over here, but I am basically about the distance from here to Hansing when this is going on. And about this time, you start trying to sink a little bit further into your cubbyhole. And as this melee of fish are swimming around and everybody's starting to get food, it starts expanding as the food starts expanding in its perimeter around the original cage. And again, you're trying to go, where's that extra little hole back here that I can slink into? And if you see a better spot, that's not the time to move. You've missed your window of opportunity to get further away from this. And at the end, the big food, as it were, is gone. There's just all this little bit of food, and again, everybody gets to eat, but that circle keeps expanding. And after a bit of time, the big fish are now coming up within a foot of you because there's potentially a little bit of food floating around. So I thought it would be kind of an appropriate thing at SharkFest, because every time I use Wireshark, with the new logo being the fin, I get a nice warm feeling. Sometimes I think about this scene. I've not been to many shark feedings. I have been diving and been around a lot of sharks, but I've not been in this kind of an environment. But it's kind of fun to be able to use a utility on an almost daily basis that also ties to something that I very much enjoy doing. And I thought SharkBytes as a topic and SharkBytes as the video might be a fun thing to see. So that's pretty much my day.
I'm Alex from England. I'm kind of usually a man with a plan. Usually our plans work. This one kind of worked, but just not in the order I was expecting it to. The first thing I remember being good at was messing around with code and fiddling with networks, which is kind of what I do now. But my goal had been to make the most amount of money I could for the least amount of effort, which I thought was a pretty good approach. So the other thing that I was interested in was flying planes. So I wanted to join the Air Force in England, and then I ran into one of these things. If you're one of the 1 in 20 people who's a man, you've probably seen these before, color vision test. So I failed that miserably, and had to revert to plan A, which was writing code and messing with networks. Fast forward kind of 15 years, and the web appeared, and I actually discovered there were other ways of getting around this test. So after a little trip to Zurich, I managed to get a medical and started learning how to fly, just not for a living. So this is a chart of London from the southeast of England. It's a bit busy, it kind of still makes my head hurt even now. So I got a private pilot's license, that was okay. Then I looked at what else there was that I could do. So I flew around for a bit. Then I did a commercial license. Then I did the extra thing, which means you can fly in cloud. Then I did an instructor rating. And whilst I was doing some instructing, I bumped into a guy who flew for an airline who wanted to get back into flying little planes again, and a great relationship was struck up. So this is my home airfield, which is Leeds in the north of England. So after I got this guy flying little planes again, he said, well, I fly for an airline, I've got loads of staff tickets, do you fancy coming along, doing some trips with me? So I did. If you, that's us flying around still. If you go on the next slide, that's what I eventually got, which was kind of nice. So the plan did work, just in the wrong order. And this is in a 747 cockpit. Kind of difficult to get into them in America since 9/11, but it's a little bit easier in Europe. So I flew around with him for quite some time, managed to get on a couple of jet training courses. And if you go on to the next slide, that's just trundling around somewhere. I've kind of lost count of the amount of places we went to, but it was a good, fun few years. Fortunately, I have an understanding wife, and if your wife's happy to let you go gallivanting around the world without her, then you really should hang on to it. So if you go on to the next slide, that's kind of where the journey ended up, which was a ferry flight, so a non-revenue flight with no passengers on board. I was legally rated to fly the aircraft. The chief pilot for the airline was on board, my friend was on board, so after a lot of asking nicely and a bit of barefaced cheek, they actually let me have a go, which was kind of nice. So we got there in the end. That's a 747-400 series, and they go like a missile with no passengers and fuel on board.
Okay, next we have Peter.
Okay, I'm here because I just could not pass up the opportunity to get up on stage and make a fool out of myself in front of 300 people. Okay, Flash. Most of us probably know what Flash is. For those who don't, Flash is a solid-state, non-volatile memory device that is just continues to grow in capacity. When I graduated from college in 1980, the biggest EEPROM that we had at that time was maybe 8 kbytes. Now, 8 gigabytes is very common, so that's like 1 million times more memory. And it just continues to blow me away how it can just keep going and going. So yesterday, John Holler made the point that that the memory does follow Moore's law, and it will continue to grow and grow. Okay, so what do you use Flash for? You use Flash to record lots and lots of information. So one thing that's going on these days is we've found out that different law enforcement agencies are using huge amounts of memory to record everything they can, with the idea being that they record everything, and if later on they want to go back and do an investigation, they run their fancy software that's able to find the needle in the haystack. Okay, so you've probably heard of the Utah data center, which is a multi-billion-dollar facility, and it's going to be handling things like zettabytes in the future. But you can also use Flash in other ways, and the countermeasure to surveillance has always been cryptography. And the holy grail of cryptography is called the one-time pad, which, interestingly enough, was invented before World War I. So it was used during World War I and World War II. It is the only form of cryptography that is mathematically provable to be that you cannot crack it. A scientist named Claude Shannon proved that many years ago. The problem is that one-time pads were really unpractical because they require so much memory. So that is changing now, because as John Holler showed you, you can record millions of hours of audio on these new memory chips. And now one-time pad is becoming a viable solution to cryptography. And the nice thing about one-time pad is that it cannot be broken as long as you follow certain caveats. which are really not hard to do. So the irony of all this is that the same technology that law enforcement is using to create this surveillance state, that same technology can be used to basically negate that whole thing and make the surveillance and all those recordings moot. Thank you, Laura. I saw the 1 minute sign. So anyway, that's really all I wanted to say, and it's just an interesting bit of our history. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, about 5 years ago, my wife and I, we took up razor advice and we jumped off a cliff. We sold everything we have here in the United States. We used to live in Seattle, a nice high-rise condo. Sold everything, moved to Panama. And we were there for 3 years, and we've been in Costa Rica since. And sometimes when you jump off a cliff, it's great advice. Sometimes you find yourself in a riptide. And that's actually what I found myself in one day. So on the beaches of Costa Rica, if you've never been there before, fantastic place. But on a lot of those beaches, there's a sign that it warns you of these riptides that are there. Now, if you've never been in one or seen one, it's just a strong current of water that can take you from the beach and suck you out to sea in a matter of seconds. So a friend of mine and I were swimming one day, got caught in this riptide, and we were in a, sorry, I'm losing my voice. Literally in a few seconds, I was from here to about 100 feet out. Now the point of that sign is it gives you a little graphic and it shows you, if you get caught in a riptide, what to do. And it shows you a little diagram, maybe you've seen one before, a little diagram of a guy swimming out of that riptide. Now the thing that sign tells you not to do is swim against that riptide. Don't swim against that current. Because if you do, you're not going to get anywhere, for one. We're not stronger than that current. For two, you're going to wear yourself out and probably die. And three, if you continue to swim against that current, the stress level that goes up inside you is so bad you can't think. So the number one instruction on those signs to get out of a riptide, you got the little diagram, but there's a couple little bullets, you could say, underneath that diagram. And you know what the first instruction is? If you get caught in a riptide, stay calm. If you don't stay calm, none of the rest matters. Right? You're not going to be able to figure out the current, not be able to see where the beach is, and then get out of it. Now, thankfully, my friend stayed calm. I didn't. I was flailing, freaking out. I was thinking shortest path, right? I wanted to get back to the current. So my friend almost punched me in the nose to knock me out. But he said, "Chris, you gotta stay calm. Your head has to talk to your heart. And you gotta get the anxiety down. Because otherwise you can't think and we're dead." So thankfully my friend was there, helped me to stay calm. And he was able to read those currents and to get us out of there. So I was thinking, you know, that sign is good for more than just getting caught in literal riptides. See, we get kept caught in riptides all the time in our real lives. All kinds of things cause us stress and anxiety, cause those anxiety levels to come up. Maybe we could be facing a health problem, it could be a relationship problem, maybe our company gets acquired or our job is in question. Right? All kinds of things can cause us to get anxious. But you know, just like with that riptide, the number one thing that we should think of is just to stay calm. See, when we get anxious, we can make bad decisions. That's almost what I did. And if I didn't have my friend there, I wouldn't be here to tell you that story today. So whenever you find yourself in a riptide, whatever it is that causes that anxiety to come up, If you take up Ray on his advice and you jump off that cliff and you jump straight into a riptide, just remember that first thing that you need to do to get out of it. Stay calm. Thank you.